Hey folks, welcome back to Tenta Outdoors. My name is Alan from season 10 of Alone. If you're new to the channel, I was a winner from that season, and I'm going to do weekly recaps of Alone US version season 12, and this is episode 1. Now I guess today it's Tenta indoors because man, I just drove through a hailstorm, high winds, rain. It's nice at the moment, but there's a big black cloud right there coming my way. So this recap coming from the truck. Stick around. So season 12 is brand new. I mean, they've never filmed in a hot climate like they have this year. So this year's Alone season 12 is being filmed in the Great Karoo Desert in South Africa. So we got a hot environment and it's a completely different season. I'm actually quite excited to see how it pans out. I mean, most of the seasons of Alone have been filmed in cold weather in the Canadian North. The first two were in Vancouver Island, but it's definitely a different environment for Alone. So being a past contestant on Alone, I'm going to try to add my own thoughts and insights on each episode. So I want to kind of go beyond just the recap of what happened, but kind of add my own perspective on it as well. So let's get right into it. Oh, here comes that wind. So the first contestant on episode 1 is Will from Texas. Now when Will was dropped off, he mentioned he didn't have any drop shock and he appeared quite confident. Now I also noticed that he appeared fairly thin and maybe wasn't able to put on much weight before this challenge. And that can play a big part of things. I mean, when you don't have extra weight on, unless you get food procurement, at least unless you're really successful in foraging, getting small game or even big game, having that extra weight on can be really helpful. It's kind of like packing a bunch of extra lunches around your waistline. When I went on the show, I was fairly heavy. My final weigh-in weight was 259. After I won on day 66, my official recorded weight was 181 pounds, so I did end up losing 78 pounds. And that 30 or 35 pounds, whatever it was that I was able to gain, I mean, that could have made the difference. Now I noticed Will has a very young child at home. Not saying that's going to be detrimental, but sometimes having young kids at home can be a real draw and can be hard to stick around on the show if things get tough. Not to say that's going to happen with Will, because past winners of Alone have had young kids at home. Players come to mind. Clay Hayes had 2 young boys, and I know Jordan Jonas also had young kids at home when he dominated out there as well. So Will's first priority is to start getting as much water ready as he can. He heads down to the water, and that gives the audience the first look at kind of the conditions of the water that all contestants have. And man, it looked pretty chunky, looked pretty nasty. And he knows he has to filter out the big chunks and boil everything before he drinks it. I don't think there's any chance that contestants are going to drink the water straight from the lake without boiling it for at least a minute. Now to filter out the big chunks, because sometimes if you boil it a minute and if there's some larger chunks in it, it can be harder to kill the bacteria or whatever microorganisms are in there. So it's really important to filter out the big chunks first before you boil it. He also mentioned that being in Africa, water is scarce, so animals from all around are going to be heading down to the water sites and drinking. And while they're drinking, obviously they're urinating and defecating in the water, and he's aware of this, that the animals of the area are probably pooping in the water, and he needs to make sure that his water is filtered and well boiled before even thinking about drinking it. He also mentioned that there's going to be microorganisms that he's going to be exposed to, whether it's in the water or on the food or on his hands, that his body might not be used to, where for people who are from the area and their bodies are used to those types of microorganisms, might not have any issues with it. But I mean, a good example for me is whenever I go down to Mexico, I always get an upset stomach, even if I drink filtered water, because there's somehow those microorganisms get into my body that would never have any effect on the locals, but I always get a bad stomach whenever I'm in Mexico. So that was a good point he made there as well. So getting water this season with the heat and the condition of the water, man, it's going to be a factor, and I think it's going to be a full-time job staying hydrated and drinking safe water. So as Will is setting up, he notices a troop of baboons up on the hill watching him, and they're very aware of his presence. And I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen a baboon, but I've seen photos of baboons' teeth, and I know they're highly intelligent, and I'm curious to see what sort of impact that the baboons will have on players this season, whether they rob their camps at night or take their foods. I don't know. I just know that they're kind of scary, and they make some pretty freaky noises as well. Once Will noticed the baboons, he thought, you know what, well, I better let them know that I'm here, and I want to establish some sort of dominance towards them. So he hikes towards them, hoping to push them off and kind of let them know that, hey, baboons, this is my territory. So he hikes up the hill towards the baboons. It seemed like quite a fairly steep hike and a long hike. And I think it's important for contestants to realize that, you know, every calorie counts out there. And if you're hiking up a hill, the amount of calories that are used for that. And I kind of thought, is that a good idea? But he gets to the top, and it actually pays off because the baboons took off. And once he got over that hill, he did notice some large game in the distance. But he also noticed a large bull kudu bedded down, my guess is about 100 yards away. So it gave him a good lay of the land, and I guess confidence knowing that there is big game around. Unfortunately, with that kudu, I mean, it picked up on his presence right away and took off. I mean, you got to remember where we are. We're in Africa, and everything is trying to eat game like a kudu, so they're going to be very wary, and I think it might be pretty hard to get close to large, wary game like that this season. And I think that the best way that contestants are going to hunt big game like that is to set up on a water hole or a path to a water hole or a food source, either by using a blind or up high in a tree stand. That's what I do anyways. Now, Will makes a comment about, you know what, if I was able to get a shot of that kudu and harvest it, what are you gonna do? Like, I don't know how warm it is there, but an animal that big, I'm guessing they're probably the size of an elk or a moose. And to be able to handle an animal that big by yourself in that sort of heat with the flies and the ants and you're by yourself, he realized that it's probably not feasible. He's not prepared to handle an animal that big in that environment. Up next in that episode was Kelsey from Montana. Now, Kelsey's first duties are surveying her area and locating resources around her site. And while doing so, she locates baboon tracks and baboon feces, knowing that they're in her area. So Kelsey informs the audience that she named her camera Karen. Now, I don't think it's just a funny thing. I think it's a good play on her part for her mental game. I mean, we all remember Tom Hanks in Castaway, that volleyball washed ashore, and he named his volleyball Wilson. And he spoke to Wilson all the time, just kind of like another human to maintain his mental state. So I know when I was out there talking to the camera at night in the dark, it kept my mind clear and kept my thoughts healthy. So I think that's a good idea, naming your camera Karen. I never thought of that. Why Karen though? Kelsey also notices a troop of baboons on the hill above her, watching her, also very aware of her presence. And she has the same thought as Will. Okay, I gotta let these guys know that I'm here and that I don't want them here, and this is my area. So she yells at them a bit. I think she yelled, "Get!" So on day 2, she wakes up and she hammers out some push-ups. Obviously, she wants to maintain her routine, but I'm telling you, wasting calories, I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, maybe it helps her mental clarity in the morning, gets her blood flowing, but I just remember how I felt later on in the game, like in the 50s and day 60s, that, man, if I hammered out a couple push-ups, I would be exhausted and probably not feel great, feel lightheaded. Just even walking up a hill, I remember getting firewood and dragging a tree out, even at the end, me cutting several pieces of firewood, I can only do one or two at a time before I felt like lightheaded and dizzy. So I don't know. I think later on in the game she'll realize that every calorie this game counts. It really does. So as she's exploring her site, Kelsey notices a water buck in the distance. It seemed like it was 300 or 400 yards away, but she explained to us that she's not allowed to hunt that even if she had an opportunity at it, because she called it a 60-pound animal. And I was confused at first, but then she explained how a 60-pound animal means that you're only allowed to hunt those animals if you brought a 60-pound bow. Now that means obviously the weight of the bow isn't in the weight itself, it's in the draw weight of the string. 60 pounds at 28 inches is how they usually establish draw weight. So she brought a 50-pound bow, which is still a very beefy bow, capable of taking all sorts of North American game. But the local regulations state that that particular animal can only be hunted with a 60-pound bow. All right, now things start getting exciting. It seemed like it was moments later, but who knows really with the edit. She spots a warthog, and the warthog is not aware of her presence. It doesn't smell her, and it doesn't appear to see her, and she mentions that warthogs do have bad eyes. So she put on a little bit of a stalk, and they showed her draw her bow as she put her GoPro down. And then there was a commercial. I'm like, come on, is she going to shoot it? Moments later, when we got back to the show, she releases the arrow, and you instantly know she hit Pumbaa. Okay, Pumbaa squealed, and she actually, it appeared according to the edit anyways, that warthog did not go far. It was a lethal hit and was dying very, very quickly, and she was able to put another arrow in it and finish it off. It's like, what? I was so shocked, surprised, happy, excited. I couldn't believe that on the first episode somebody got, I don't know if a warthog is considered big game in Africa, but it's 100 pounds. Let's call it big game. I mean, very impressive to have such a good shot with your nerves. I mean, she mentioned her legs were shaking, and to put a good shot on an animal that you've probably never even seen it before and effectively dispatch it so quickly, very impressive work. Now, the caption said you could get 55 pounds of meat from that warthog. And she was so excited at first. She was kind of like, instead of drop shock, she had like kill shock, it seemed. You're like, okay, what do we do? I need to take care of this. It's hot. But she got her thoughts together. At first, she was trying to pack it back. It didn't appear like she'd even gutted it. And I was kind of wondering why she hadn't gutted it. And if she was going to take it back to camp, I was wondering why she would want to gut it, close to her camp to attract predators. But she got her thoughts together. She calmed down a bit, and she realized she needed to gut it and quarter it to get it back to camp. So well done. In my opinion, a warthog like that is a perfect size of animal to get out there. Like anything bigger than that is going to be really hard to preserve the meat before flies and ants and the heat causes spoiling of your meat. So I think she's quite fortunate, and I think it's a great thing that she got this warthog first instead of a larger animal, which could have really been stressful if you know that you're losing the meat. So she was on it. She knew that once she got it back to camp that she had to start preserving it immediately. And I like that she cut off a great big backstrap to cook that night, because in this situation in Africa, I mean, you got to eat as much as you can, because the best way to preserve calories from that warthog is eat as much as you can before it starts spoiling. So she built a tripod smoker. I'm not sure if it can be considered smoking, because she did have a jacket around the back, but there wasn't a lot of smoke coming off it. It wasn't contained, so a lot of the smoke was escaping. And she seemed to have the little bits of meat very, very close to the fire. So I think it just ended up cooking it or drying it very thoroughly, which still will preserve the meat. I think that maybe the edit didn't show a lot of things about that warthog. I mean, the amount of meat they showed her smoking, they were just little bits of meat, so they might have accounted for maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 pounds of meat that she smoked on the fire. I'm curious to know what happened to all the meat. Maybe they'll let us know in the other episodes, like the heart, the liver, all the quarters, like what happened to the rest of it? Was she able to smoke it? Did she lose it to the ants and to maggots and the flies laying their eggs in it? Like, who knows? So hopefully she got as much as she can out of that and was able to preserve the majority of that warthog. But super impressive. First episode, we got game down. I'm pumped. Next up, we got Pablo from Florida. Now, I hope Pablo is not too upset if he's a Florida fan when the Panthers lost in overtime to the Edmonton Oilers. It's now tied 2-2. So I did notice that Pablo looked like he was able to bulk up quite a bit for the show. He looks like he was able to put on probably 20 to 30 pounds, maybe even 40 pounds, hopefully. It's such a good idea to gain a bit of weight. I know I spoke about it earlier, like to pack all those internal lunches in your gut that could play a big role later on in the game. He talks about his walking stick and how production or the safety team encouraged participants to have a walking stick. Now, I missed the reason why, but I'm guessing to be probing the area in the grass ahead of you before you step there to make sure there's no poisonous snakes there. And apparently there's a lot of poisonous snakes in that area. Pablo also notices how filthy and chunky the water is, and I like what he tried here. He did what's called a coyote boil. It's when you dig a hole reasonably close to the shoreline, you clean it out, and the idea behind that is that the water from the lake is going to filter in through the dirt and fill up that hole, hopefully filtering a lot of the big chunky stuff out of the water before it gets to that hole. Later on in the episode, they showed it wasn't really working. It kind of flooded over and didn't really work. So he ended up filtering the water into his pot with it was a handkerchief, I believe. And it seemed to work quite well. So Pablo makes a temporary shelter, and I did like the way he put a ground sheet on the bottom to protect himself against scorpions. Good idea. I mean, thinking back to my experience, man, I was whining about mice crawling over me at night, and having to kill all those mice in my shelter. But man, these guys are worried about scorpions. And you got to remember, these guys are in an environment so different. I mean, I was used to my spot in northern Canada. Like, it was familiar to me, the animals, the plants, the sounds. These guys are in a different continent, the dark continent. And the sounds of the animals they're hearing at night are going to be foreign. The plants are foreign. The insects are foreign. The environment is just so unfamiliar to them. It's really something that we have to consider this season, and it's going to be quite interesting to watch how it all plays out. Man, the night noises, that would freak me out. I hardly heard anything at night, just some rustling and things like that. Not like baboons yelling at each other and whatever else you're going to hear out there. I wonder if there's lions in the area. I doubt that there's lions. That'd just be too dangerous, but I don't know. We had grizzly bears in season 8. We will have to see. I liked how he commented on how the simple tasks that we have in life become such challenging tasks when you're on the show trying to survive. I mean, something as simple as water. I mean, we take that for granted. You turn on the tap, you got a glass of water there. You got to filter it, and you got to boil it before you drink it. And I think it's going to take up a lot of time. That's one thing that I kind of took away from the show. My experience out there was just a lot of things that I took for granted, and how lucky I am, and how just being able to show gratitude for the life that I have. Because when you're out there, all those little things that you never think about at home, you realize are such luxurious items. Yeah, so having water out there is really going to be a full-time job. Having clean water and staying hydrated, I think, is going to be a real challenge this season. Next up, we have Katie from Australia. Now, her first scene was kind of wondering what all the other contestants were doing at that time. And I was a little bit surprised at that because, man, I didn't think about that till quite later on in the game. Wondering who was in the game, wondering if someone got big game, wondering who's tapped out, wondering how everyone's doing. I didn't start thinking about that till weeks in, maybe even longer, maybe a month in. But she was thinking about that right away, which I found interesting. Now, she didn't seem to get a whole lot of airtime this episode, but I could have got distracted for the moment. They do show Katie foraging acacia seeds and catching a rather large fish. Good on you. Katie seems to be off to a really solid start. I was really impressed with this next scene of Katie, where she's doing something at camp, and she's like, I smell something. She goes, I smell urine in the wind. I'm like, damn. So she was able to pick up the presence of game just by her nose. I've never been to Africa and I've never smelt, warthogs, but I was quite impressed with her being able to use her sense of smell to locate game quite a ways away. And sure enough, moments later, a few warthogs were cruising by her camp. She went after them momentarily, but they were on her pretty quick, and they took off. We are on to Jit from New Zealand. Now, the first thing that I noticed about Jit was how thin he was. And I mean, some people just aren't able to put on weight. I don't know if he tried or not, but he's definitely noticeably thin. And food procurement is going to be very important for him fairly early on. Now, I noticed that Jit brought a water bottle, and any other season of Alone, I'd be like, oh, why did you bring a water bottle? I mean, it'll be handy, but I think some other items that are available to us would have trumped a water bottle. But for this season, I think a water bottle is not a bad choice, just with the heat and being able to store some of that water. And I think it was obviously a metal canteen, so he'd be able to boil his water within that as well. He also has a troop of baboons high on a ridge watching him as well. Jit is super excited about fishing, and he has decided to make that his main focus before he starts focusing on hunting. So Jit finds some prickly pear cactus, he shaves it down, and he eats it. Now, something he said afterward just kind of, I thought was a little bit odd. He said, whoa, I can really feel the energy burst for that. And I thought it was strange that he'd say that so early on in the game, like just the first few days. I just remember how I felt in the 40s, in the 50s, and in the 60s. Like if you're feeling like you needed that energy burst so early, he must have a really fast metabolism or just really need to be eating a small amount fairly often. I'm not sure. So Jit tried some fishing, is a little bit frustrated because the area that he's fishing in has a lot of rocks and he's getting a lot of snags, and he ended up getting his hook caught, and he headed into the water and manually unhooked his hook from the rock, and he came back in shore. So the next morning, Jit heads out looking for bait. He's looking for some stinky bait to catch that first fish. And once he has that first fish, he can use parts of that fish as bait to catch more fish, and so on and so on, kind of like in season 11, how they did that. But that's when the producers gave us the first hint, gave us the audience that he wasn't feeling well. He starts, you notice he's got some pain in his stomach, and it just seems to progress and get worse from that moment on. Moments later, he says on camera, I had to fart, but I didn't. I kind of went, what? And I thought about it, and I think he sharted. So from that point on, in episode, he continued to get sick and feel more and more ill. They show him in his shelter. He's vomiting. He feels and looks terrible. He woke up in the middle of the night. He didn't want to drink any water, but he knew his body's getting dehydrated. And he again said to the camera that he soiled himself several more times in the night. I mean, you need to put yourself in Jit's situation. You're in the shelter in a foreign land, hearing all these crazy noises, knowing that animals are around, and you're having those issues. You got to deal with it. How do you deal with it? There's no toilet paper. You can't go to the bathroom and jump in the shower and clean up and get a glass of water and a Tylenol from your cupboard. It's very tough. And I felt for him because I just knew how sick he was. I mean, we've all had a stomach bug like that, like the worst stomach flu you can think of. But imagine if you've got a stomach flu and just go out in your backyard and lay on a tarp. You can't use the bathroom. You can't get a glass of water. There's no toilet paper. You can't wash your hands, and it's just a horrible situation. And he woke up the next morning not feeling any better. And you could just tell how sick he was. And he tapped out of the competition. He officially tapped out, and production and the safety team came and got him and took him away. He feels upset. He was fighting back tears. Man, I did really feel for the guy. I mean, the build up to being on Alone, the preparation, the excitement, and to have that bad luck of getting a stomach bug so early on in the game and having to remove yourself from the game, I mean, mentally, it can be devastating for some. And I felt for him. Sorry, Jit. Folks, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Tune in next Friday or Saturday, whenever I get it out there, for the recap of episode 2. And if you like my videos, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. You can also leave a comment. I'll try to answer any question I can based on my experience as well. So we'll see you next time. Take care.